first thing I always look for is what happens afterwards. Like, how's he walking? What's the latest on Zion?
So the official position, Ryan, is that he remains out indefinitely. He will not play against the Clippers in the play-in game tomorrow. He will not play against the Suns if they advance into the playoffs. That said, he is playing 5-on-5 scrimmages, which means he's ahead of Ben Simmons in this regard. And if there's a possibility that the Pelicans go deep into a playoff series or somehow advance and pull an upset, I guess I wouldn't rule it out totally. But I think right now we're going to have to settle for watching those pregame dunks.
Those dunks are so impressive, though, Legs. If we can put it up again, let's do it, because, I mean, that's just a sight to see. What do you make of seeing that? Look at this. I mean, the agility, it looks great.
Any dunk's impressive to me, Ryan. I made my living a different way. So that's, this is special. You see a guy, it's built like this. The league's never seen anything quite like Zion Williamson, and the league needs him. And all this does is tantalize us with what could have been this year. But look, it's obviously great to see him at least moving around. I mean, we went months this year without a sighting of Zion Williamson, so this is great news. Now, as far as him playing this year, I think Windy hit on it. I think that would be a massive mistake to inject him into any series in which he's been off this long, and now it's the most physical, it's the most intense. He's been gone. What are you doing? Because even if you put him in a series, let's say, for a couple games against Phoenix, they're not going to win that series.
But even if it's 2-2 or 3-3 and you're right up against it?
Well, I guess maybe you're being more optimistic about even getting to that point than I am. I mean, the Suns, to me, are head and shoulders the best team in the NBA. So I don't think you're winning that series. So what would you really be doing? You'd be seeing Zion Williamson for 2 or 3 games and then shutting him down again for months. So I just think you're at this point, it's got to be, let's look toward next year, and let's look toward keeping Zion Williamson on the court so we have him for an entire season. Now, what New Orleans did last night was impressive. I think they've got a great chance to beat the Clippers and get into the postseason. That would set the tone going forward with C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram. You add Zion Williamson to the mix healthy, that is a team that is absolutely relevant and in the mix in the Western Conference next year.
Yeah, future looking bright for them. Now, speaking of, so Zion probably indefinitely out for the playoffs, Wendy's saying, but let's talk about a player in the playoffs. In Philly, the Sixers preparing for their first round series against Toronto. All eyes are on James Harden. He faces enormous pressure after coming over after that midseason trade. Here's what Harden had to say about that pressure when talking to the publication Complex. I don't feel any pressure. I don't feel any of that. For me, it's going out there and playing my game and trying to help my team win. Okay, this took me aback. And look, on the one hand, Legs, I think you could look at this and say, it's great. He's a leader. He's confident. He's calm. Maybe that's what we want in our leaders. On the other hand, what?
Yeah. You're asking me? I think it's disingenuous. Listen. And the second half of that statement is true. For me, it's just about going out, playing my game, doing my thing. He's right, but it's doing that at a high level and helping a guy who could be the MVP of the league, not let him down, right? And you brought him in here for one specific reason, to win a championship. And you held out 2/3 of the year for this exact player, if you're Daryl Morey, to come in. He's not playing great coming into this. Now, for him to say, I have nothing to prove and I feel no pressure, I just don't think he's being honest. He's trying to put forth a front to other people, in the media in particular, and the fan base, to say, hey, listen, nothing you say about me, write about me, is going to get inside my head. I just want you to know I'm comfortable in my own skin. The truth is, though, we all know this. He's going to be alone with his own thoughts. He's going to feel pressure in that market under these circumstances, what he was brought there to do. He absolutely is going to feel it. And he absolutely has something to prove. In fact, I'll say he has more to prove than any other player in the postseason coming into it. And he knows that. He's just trying to put forth that front of confidence and also lack of regard for what other people think. Like, you're not going to bother me. I'm good no matter what happens. The truth is, though, he will be judged harshly if he does not play well and they lose this series.
Yeah, he may have 270 million reasons to prove something. But, Wendy, what's your reaction to what James Harden's saying?
I think he's being 100% honest, and I think he's right.
Oh.
Legs, you're speaking from somebody who's worried about accountability. James Harden is not. He played one of the most disappointing playoff series I can remember 3 years ago, blamed Chris Paul. Rockets sent Chris Paul packing. Last 2 years, wasn't happy with the situation, quit on his team, got traded. No matter what he does in this postseason, he's getting that $200 million contract. I mean, you're talking about it from a personal accountability standpoint. I haven't seen that from Harden, and I've only seen him be rewarded and get everything he wants. So he plays well in the postseason, and the Sixers advance. Great. He plays poorly. I'll let you know on July 1st when I'm ready to come in and sign my contract. That's how his life has been.
Wow.
Why would it be any different?
Well, I hear you. So, I mean, that's really talking about a guy that may be immune from feeling that because he's secure. He's got his money. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's got an MVP. I hear you, Wendy. But here's the thing. He's never experienced scrutiny like he's going to experience in this market. There's nothing like what that fan base and what that media are going to do to James Harden. He never got that in Houston. He didn't get it in Brooklyn. This is a completely different level of expectation and accountability. And he's going to feel that every single day when he's in public, every time he takes the floor going forward. He's going to feel it. And that's why I think there is more pressure in this situation, even for a guy that might not care. Like, he's just going to get his numbers, got his MVP, I win, I get my money. If that's how we're going to portray James Harden, okay, but not in this market. They're not going to allow you to just go and be happy and spend your money. That's just not what Philadelphia's going to do to him.
No way. You played there, you played well, and they love you for it. But if you don't play well in Philly, they never let you forget it every minute of every day. Guys, we'll come back and talk about this a little bit more, because this one we can't let go. But we got to talk about the NFL draft 2 weeks away. Lewis, you're going to be at the draft. I tell you, look, when you look at some of the players out there, Kayvon Thibodeau, others getting ready to make a big splash. And Lewis, let's talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. Where will he end up?
A great question. I mean, it's definitely one of the sticking points for me early on in the top 5 picks of this draft. Does he go as high as 4 to the Jets? I think what's really going to be important, I think, for me is exactly the team that he goes to in terms of how are they going to use him, how are they going to coach him, what are they going to demand of him. If he goes to the Jets and he plays for Robert Saleh, I can tell you this: they coach their defensive line in a way that anybody who is not conditioned to give 100% all the time, you will have a hard time playing for Robert Saleh. And I think that's exactly what Kayvon needs, because when he is dialed in and he looks like he Detroit Lions, who just a couple years ago drafted Jeff Okudah in the top 10. Look, for me, I think Ahmad is one of those guys who's a can't-miss type of prospect, meaning this: he is a true in the modern day NFL, and even in the NFL of 20 years ago, a true shutdown corner with his 6'2 size, 190 pounds, 4.41 40-yard dash. He's the type of guy who can match up against any kind of wide receiver in the NFL and really excel. And then lastly, how high do the quarterbacks ultimately go? How high does Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis go? Which one of these guys comes off the board first? And could somebody like Malik Willis, as has been talked about, go as high as number 2 to the Lions, although I can't see it? Or does the 6th spot there with Carolina, is that where the conversation really starts with these quarterbacks? And then, is it Kenny Pickett? Does he utilize his relationship that he had coming out of high school with Matt Rule, committing to Temple originally before then transferring to and going to Pitt? Or is it Malik Willis who ultimately is the first quarterback taken? Ultimately, I think in the end, both quarterbacks will be drafted higher than normally these two quarterbacks would go in a quarterback-heavy draft. But I think both of these players, especially Kenny Pickett, is a guy who can come in and really help your football team right away. So I think these are 3 storylines, though, that I'll be watching in 2 weeks.
Okay, it's going to be interesting. And we bring in ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller. He's also getting up with us to talk about these quarterbacks. And Matt, Lewis was just talking about it. The prospect of overdrafting quarterbacks. What do you think about it in this particular draft, where they're not being valued in the same way that they have been in years past?